It is hard to believe that a year has now passed and that it is the end of my mourning period for my mom, Yocheved Bas Yitzchak Meyer, Aliyah HaShalom. Her Yartzeit was last night and today, and it means so much to me to be able to give this talk in her memory at this significant time. I am actually giving this talk tonight in both my mom's and my dad, Baruch ben Shlomo, Alav HaShalom's memory, as their Yartzeits are within 2 weeks of each other. But my dad passed away over 30 years ago, so just so you know, it's not. May my parents each have an Aliyas Neshama as a result of our learning together tonight.
Amen.
Amen. For my talk this evening, I will be using sources from both aish.com and chabad.com, as well as the Siddur and Chumash. Words can never aptly describe what it feels like to lose a mother. A mother is the most holy role that one can fill on this earth, and to lose the person who gave birth to us, nurtured us, lovingly took care of us, sheltered us, cherished us, worried about us, counseled us, and who expressed a never-ending love for us, is a deeply painful loss to experience. Endings have always been difficult for me, ever since I lost my dad over 3 decades ago. I try hard to study my loved ones' faces and features because I want to remember every detail for as long as possible. When I last visited my mom before her passing, I spent a lot of time looking at her eyes and her hands, the eyes through which she gazed at me with infinite love, and the hands that so lovingly took care of me from the moment I was born. I knew deep in my heart that the time was coming soon, when I would never again get to see those eyes and all of my mom's beloved features. The Torah teaches us that to love someone is to identify them with their virtues. I would like to take a moment to describe some of my mom's many virtues and to share some of my fondest memories, which I will make sure to remind myself of whenever I say Yitzkor for her in the upcoming years. Yocheved Bas Yitzchak Meyer loved having all of her children with her under one roof. She would fondly reminisce about some of our family driving trips to New York, where all of her kids would be sleeping in the back of the car, and how she loved looking into the back seat and seeing all of her babies there together. She described these times as her most cherished moments. Our mom had a resilience to her that shone through right until her last breath of life. When our dad passed away, she was only 50 years old, and she went back to work and became an extremely talented and highly regarded bookkeeper, so as to ensure that she could support her children. And she also learned to drive, which I insisted that she do, and I remember fondly taking her out to practice. As I visited Montreal today, driving to the cemetery with my cherished son Johnny at my side, I was filled with so many memories and so much familiarity of my city, where I grew up with my mom and dad and 2 brothers. I actually sensed my mom's presence with me as we drove to the cemetery today, and I sensed my dad as well. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but I could almost smell my mom's perfume and see how she looked when she was younger, and all dressed up in her beautiful, soft maroon coat with the fur collar. She looked so good. I remembered being by her side as we walked on Queen Mary Street. It was just my mom and me. I was quite young. and we would stop into Peggy's nut shop to get warm nuts put into a paper bag. And then we would continue on our journey home by bus, as she didn't drive. I treasure that gentle little memory of me as a young girl, so proud to be out with my mom. My mom welcomed everyone into her home, and she made everybody feel comfortable, never leaving anyone out of discussions, ensuring that everyone was always felt valued and included. My friends would sometimes call her up for advice, either about me or other issues that they were grappling with. My mom sagely coached me through many of my teenage angsts and taught me countless life lessons about how to be strong and resilient, how to navigate life's challenges, the importance of family, and she taught me how to be self-confident while being humble, and how to strive to be my very best while not being competitive with others. My mom was an extremely loyal person who always took my side. She kept my precious secrets, and she was always beaming with pride, not only about her children's accomplishments, but about who we are as individuals. Although we absolutely froze today on this gray, bitter, cold day at the cemetery in Montreal. Montreal is very cold, much colder than Toronto. My Johnny and I sang Tehillim at my parents' gravesite. It meant the world to me to be there for this very important milestone and to be there with my son, their grandson, the one my mom jokingly called her boyfriend because he used to drop by her condo and visit her often. The one whose Hebrew name, Yitzchak Meyer, is her dad, Alav Hashalam's namesake. Being there today, especially today, on my mom's first Yartzeit, was a meaningful effort on our part so that my mom could, God willing, have an Aliyas Neshama as a result of our heartfelt prayers at this critical one-year juncture in the soul's journey to the afterlife. Even though I knew I was speaking tonight, I felt compelled to go. I needed to be there for my mom. In my journey as a Balas Tshuva, I have come to recognize the truth to the saying that it is harder to learn about something when you are on the outside looking in. But when we try something on and give it a chance, or when we personally experience something firsthand, we gain a far deeper insight into it. As I have come to understand the brilliance of the Torah's teaching and Jewish ways in many respects over the years, so too, with the Jewish way in death and mourning of my mom, do I now see the incredible wisdom in what we, as Jews, are mandated to do after the loss of a parent. As Lori Palatnik describes in her article on the H.com website, entitled The ABCs of Death and Mourning, Jewish practices relating to death and mourning have two purposes: to show respect for the dead and to comfort the living who will miss the deceased. The mourning and memorializing rituals mandated by the Torah empower us with the spiritual tools with which to honor the departed soul and assist with its elevation to its new, higher realm of existence. Judaism provides a meaningful, organized approach to mourning that involves symbolic stages, each of which truly impacted me. These stages of mourning provide a framework to channel and express our grief, and it is important to carefully observe these guidelines and rituals. But it is equally important that they not be exceeded, as we are to graduate from one level of mourning to another until our loss is integrated as a constructive and not destructive force in our life. As I passed through each of these stages of mourning over the past year, I recognized their significance and I would like to briefly review how they affected me, starting with the hospital room. Where everything felt so surreal. All of us in there together, my brother, my stepdad, my husband, and my cherished children, grappling with the new reality of the loss of our mother, grandmother, wife, and mother-in-law, trying to bravely figure out what to do next. The initial stage, just after death, is the first official stage of mourning. The focus of this initial stage of loss is on the care and honor of the deceased and the related preparations, from arranging for the care of the body while it awaits interment, to choosing a funeral home and burial box and planning the funeral service, calling the rabbi, writing the eulogy into the wee hours of the night, to giving the eulogy, and then, in my case, racing to Montreal for a second short memorial service there, followed by the burial of my mom, next to my dad. The burial is an extremely painful part of the early process, as it forces the reality of your loss upon you, well before you are ready to accept it. Yet it must be done, and it happens very quickly, as the soul is said to linger around and is considered to be in deep pain until the body is actually laid to rest and buried. As we are racing to accomplish the multitude of duties that we are tasked with just after our loved one's departure from this world, when our own soul just wants to be left alone, to grieve, and to hide away, we instead gain our first real glimpse into the wisdom of our Jewish mourning rituals, as they ever so wisely leave us with very little time at this extremely early stage to fully absorb and internalize the gravity of what has just happened. Shiva. We then came back home from Montreal for Shabbos and beautiful food prepared by our wonderful community members. And after Shabbos, the official Shiva period began, where the focus shifts to the mourners. It is an emotional and spiritual healing time of 7 days, where the mourners sit low, dwell together, and friends and loved ones came to support us with short visits. The Shiva house takes on an ambiance of solemnity, filled with memories, contemplation, and reflection. You need some water? No, it's okay. This island of time of 7 days is an interesting mix of deep sadness with a feeling of brotherhood and closeness with extended family and community. Observing Shiva also gives honor to the departed, and the merit of its observance gives an elevation to the departed one's soul. The memorial candle that was lit in my house for the Shiva allows us to remember that our loved one's soul is eternal. And this thought is meant to help bring light into the darkness in which we are now immersed. I recall checking in on that light very often, making sure that it was still flickering brightly, ever so worried that it might burn out before its time, or before my time of being ready for the flicker of my mom's Neshama in that candle to be extinguished, and the symbolism thereof. The end of the Shiva period was particularly difficult for me, as it is said that the spirit of the departed fills the Shiva home, and I didn't want to let go. On the morning that we got up from sitting Shiva, I had an overflow of emotions that I felt the need to express. So I wrote a special letter to my mom, and after a week of not leaving the house, the mourners are required to go out and walk around the block together as a symbol of departure from the Shiva period. as we now are to begin to slowly re-enter our everyday lives. Once again, I felt a surreal quality as I took note of the trees, the clouds, and the sky, all of which were still there, but my mom was not. Slow Sheen. The next phase of mourning is called the Slow Sheen, which is the first 30 days following the burial, including the Shiva period. Most restrictions that applied to mourners during the 7-day Shiva period are now lifted, and for the next 23 days, mourners are allowed to leave their house and begin to work again, although they may not feel like they want to. The mourner must still limit social engagements, avoid festive outings where music is played, and mourners do not shave or cut their hair during this period of the Slow Sheen. Although one is still mourning, the Slow Sheen laws allow for a gradual re-entry into everyday life. Moments of deep sadness and longing are to be expected. And having these few continued restrictions reminds us, and the people around us, that this is a process that certainly is not over yet. The 30 days, the Jewish calendar is marked by lunar time. As the moon waxes and wanes in a cycle, the 30-day period of mourning is an opportunity to emotionally come full circle. The process begins with the funeral and first days of Shiva, when not even a glimmer of light is seen. As time goes on, the light slowly comes back, fuller and fuller. The 30 days is an important central cycle of time, a time to renew and to come to grips with our new reality. Unveiling of the Tombstone. The erecting of a tombstone gives honor to the body that housed the soul. A stone is also symbolic of eternity, like the cornerstone of a building, placed to last for all time. And what is eternal about our loved ones? It is their lasting qualities that we can still rely upon. Our loved ones live on because they affected us on the deepest of levels. We erect stones and remember what they erected in their lifetimes, their deeds, their character. They will never be forgotten. We had the unveiling for my mom about 8 months after her burial. As our life marched on, after the end of the 30-day period, the planning of the tombstone swiftly pulled me back into the reality of my loss. Once again, I was required to fulfill my duty as a child, to arrange for my mom's tombstone. I took great pains to ensure that the words and images chosen gave honor to my mom, and that they meaningfully reflected the depth of our feelings for her and effectively symbolized what she means to us. It took some time to bring it to fruition, but once it was ready, we all went back to Montreal for the unveiling of the head and footstone. It was a sunny autumn day in October, and the cemetery looked beautiful. We went to visit my mom and dad, whose grave sites, as mentioned, are right next to each other. As I was dealing long distance with a tombstone maker in Montreal, seeing an image of your parents' stone by email with their name and dates of living is a shock to behold with our eyes. But seeing the stone in person at the site of where your loved one is buried is a difficult milestone to take in and internalize. I have to say, seeing the head and footstones again today for my mom's Yartzeit gave me a sense of peace, as I saw once again how perfectly befitting the stone's images are, with delicate birds flying over clouds, which represents my mom's soul soaring high, and an etching of a mother bird tending to her baby. My mom would often point out birds flying high in the sky. It also felt so right having her right beside my dad, with the font of their stones a perfect match. It gave me comfort in knowing that she is back together again with the love of her life, my dad. Going back to the unveiling, we were all there, my husband, my children, including dear Ora, my brother and his family, my stepdad, some cousins, a Montreal cantor to lead prayers, and some cherished friends who traveled from Toronto to be there for me. I spoke, and then my brother did, and then my daughter spoke at the unveiling. The most beautiful words, reminiscing about her bubby and expressing her love for me, her mom. Her words meant the world to me, as did having all of my treasured family members close by my side. After we finished the unveiling service, we were determined to find my mom's parents, Alav Hashalom, who are also buried in that same cemetery. We walked far and wide under the bright canopy of clear blue sky, sunshine, and towering trees. And we found my grandmother, my mom's mom, Surah Zisel ben Aaron's site, along with that of my great-grandfather, Surah Zisel's father, my mom's maternal grandfather. What an incredible feeling to see my very own lineage right before my eyes. I felt a connectedness that I had never felt before. As I got back into our car, I sorted through old family photos that my cousins had emailed me during our Shiva. Photos that they had, but that I had never seen before. There was a photo that was taken 70 years ago of my mom's father bringing a beautiful bouquet of flowers to his deceased wife's grave, my mom's mom. The very gravesite where we stood that day, my husband and me, my brother, Ora, and our children, and our dear friend. What an incredible feeling of continuity. I also found a photo of my great-grandfather, Aaron Reisler, Alav Hashalom, my mom's maternal grandfather, Surah Zisel's dad, my mom's mom, whose gravesite we also had visited that day. And as I carefully scrutinized the photo on my phone, sitting in my car right after the unveiling, as I carefully scrutinized the photo of my great-grandfather, I was struck with a strong sense of familiarity, trying to figure out who he reminded me of, until I realized that it was me. He reminded me of me, my great-grandfather. This deeply impacted me. With a discerning eye, I continued to study these photos that I had on my phone. And when I zoomed in on my grandfather, Yitzchak Meyer's photo, my mom's dad, lo and behold, I noticed for the very first time that my son Jeremy looks like him. And come to think of it, my David has my mom's mom, Surah Zisel's cute nose. And Johnny and Dina have my dad's mom's full lips. And incredibly, Dina and I both have noted from early on that my granddaughter, Nava Sarah, Dina and Gavri's daughter, Leora and my granddaughter, Nava Sarah is a mini version of my mom, somewhat in her looks, but more importantly in her expressions and her personality and the way she looks out at you from her gloriously gray eyes, like my mom's uniquely gray eyes. In fact, to this very day, when I see Nava Sarah, who is named after my mom's mom, Nava Sarah, Surah Zisel, I am convinced that my mother's soul lives on in her, as her expressions and personality are constant reminders of the bubbly, spontaneous, spunky, defiant, radiant personality that I know my mom had been as a child, and that we caught glimpses of throughout the years as her children. After that bright sunny day of my mom's unveiling, and understanding on an even deeper level how we all have to leave this world at some point, I felt an incredible sense of continuity and kinship as I saw before my very own eyes how flickers of our dearly departed extended family live on in us and our children and our grandchildren for generations to come. The 1 year period. And so, I have come to this final stage. I have more to say, and so I have come to this final stage, the end of the first year without my mom, where I sadly and reluctantly have to let go of my mourning period, that special cocoon that I have been living in for the past 12 months, a cocoon of sensing that perhaps my mom's soul has been lingering nearby. There is a comfort and safety in being within the year, because once you get beyond it, you feel like you have to let go. You have to acknowledge that your loved one is truly gone. Just as there was a comfort in the Shiva period of being a unique island of time, so too is there an ironic sense of security in the 1 year period as a special place, a holding pattern, where we retain the distinctive status of a mourner, which we hold on to like a hero's scars, protecting ourselves from the reality of having to finally let go. The soul. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch writes in Horeb that when people are in a state of grief, they physically feel a vacuum within them. This is the most painful state because the essential drive of every person is the drive for fullness and completion. The different stages of mourning allow us to come to grips with our loss. Eventually we realize that the empty hole is not nearly as deep or as vast as we initially felt, especially because Judaism believes that although the body, being finite, does die, the soul, the essence of our loved one, is eternal. And the connection between the departed soul and its loved ones lives on. This reality begins to slowly fill the vacuum, but not completely. We can never fully grasp the eternity of the soul. There will always be that space inside of us that has unanswered questions and that feels an emptiness due to our painful loss. We are human beings who are limited in our capacity to truly understand the ways of Hashem and the afterlife. And because of the inextricable link between life and death, through the loss of a loved one, we become deeply pensive about existential considerations where we ponder life and its meaning, relationships, and the significance of the people in our lives. Time and how finite it is, aging, and how to gracefully accept the aging process that is inevitable. Our own soul reaches into the depths of our consciousness, where we try to resolve these esoteric, philosophical, and spiritual mysteries, where we find ourselves lost in meaningful and sometimes painful thoughts that are ours alone to ponder. Through my research of Orthodox Jewish literature for this talk, it is understood that when we die, our soul leaves our body. But for the first 12 months, it retains a temporary relationship to the body, coming and going until the body has begun to disintegrate. This first year after the death of the body is an extremely difficult period for the soul, where the soul is said to stand before the heavenly court, where it is given a judgment and accounting of its earthly life. We experience the true import and effect of our actions, a reality from which we were sheltered during our physical lifetimes. As the soul is now freed from the limitations and concealments of the physical state, it can now see godliness. It can now look back at its own life and experience what it truly was. The soul's experience of the godliness it brought into the world with its mitzvahs, or positive actions, is the exquisite pleasure it experiences after death, while its experience of the destructiveness it wrought through its lapses and transgressions is excruciatingly painful. Once a soul leaves this world, there are no longer any opportunities for it to accomplish and do mitzvahs. Our sages teach us that the soul feels pained and remorseful with the realization that it is too late to rectify any misdeeds or gain mitzvahs and achieve goodness. Facing judgment, the soul cries out, "If only I would have the opportunity to do more." What we can do to continue to honor our parents. This is where we come in. We, who remain in this world, can do a great kindness and give honor once again to our parents. A soul's difficult experience can be mitigated by the actions of his or her children and loved ones here on earth. Reciting Chodesh and engaging in other good deeds in the merit of and for the elevation of the departed soul means that the soul, in effect, is continuing to act positively upon the physical world, thereby adding to the goodness of its physical lifetime. Honoring our parents is something that we can continue to do for all time. We see in the Siddur, in the blessings of the Torah, which form part of the essential morning blessings that we say every day, it says, "These are the precepts whose fruits a person enjoys in this world, but whose principle remains intact for him in the world to come. They are the honor due to father and mother." And then it continues to list acts of kindness, early attendance at the house of study, morning and evening, hospitality to guests, visiting the sick, providing for a bride, escorting the dead, absorption in prayer, bringing peace between man and his fellow, and the study of Torah is equivalent to them all. But as we can see, honoring our parents is said first. Honoring our parents is essential. Here is what the Torah says on the topic, as we recently read in Parshas Yitro. "Honor your father and your mother as the Lord your God has commanded you, in order that your days may be lengthened, and that it should be good for you upon the land which the Lord your God gives to you. And every man shall revere his mother and his father." This is directly from the Torah. "And you shall observe my Sabbath. I am the Lord your God." Leviticus. We see from these two verses that there are two mitzvah commandments: to honor your parents and to revere your parents. Many people think that honoring parents is some kind of payback for all those years of changing diapers and paying for education. Actually, this mitzvah was given to the generation who wandered 40 years in the desert, where Hashem automatically provided for everyone's needs. The parents didn't feed their children. They had the manna to eat. The parents didn't provide clothing. The clothes grew with them and never needed washing. Nevertheless, it was precisely this generation who stood at Mount Sinai and heard God proclaim, "Honor your father and mother." We learn an integral concept from this. The mitzvah of honoring our parents does not depend on what our parents did for us, or even whether they were good parents. Rather, we honor parents simply because they gave us the gift of life. Imagine you were drowning and a stranger came along and saved your life. You would be forever indebted to that person. All the more so should we be grateful to our parents who gave us life. The Talmud teaches that there are 3 partners in the formation of a person: father, mother, and the Almighty. If we have gratitude to our parents for the gift of life, how much more so will we be grateful to Hashem for creating and sustaining the entire world, for giving us air to breathe, flowers to smell, and soil to walk on. By honoring those who brought us into existence, we learn not to take things for granted and to develop an appreciation for the kindness of others. As a reward for honoring parents, the Torah promises long life. One possible explanation is that taking care of parents, especially when they are elderly, can be very time-consuming. So God compensates, so to speak, by adding extra years to our own life. As an added bonus, when our children see us honoring our parents, they will learn the importance of this mitzvah. That's the payback when it comes to our turn to be on the receiving end. But that is not why we do it. How to honor. And then I'm almost done. There are actually 2 parts to this mitzvah. Honor your parents, in Hebrew, kibud avaim. These are the positive to-do actions. And revere your parents, which are the don't-do actions. The basic way to honor parents is to, as we know, is to care for their needs. Of course, you should never let your parents feel that they are a burden or that you are assisting them only out of obligation. Honoring parents goes beyond just doing favors. An element of this mitzvah is to admire your parents and consider them to be eminent people. For example, if you hear someone speak negatively about your parents, you are required to speak up and defend their honor. Even more, you should make a specific effort to love your parents. As I mentioned earlier in my talk, the definition of love is identifying people with their virtues. This was an important level of growth for me throughout this past year. It was very difficult for me to keep photos of my parents in parts of my home where I would frequently see them, such as where I light my Shabbos candles. Seeing photographs of them would elicit a feeling of pain and sadness due to the fact that they are now gone from this world, but also because of my complex emotions about aspects of the family dynamics while I was growing up. During the year of mourning, we go through a cathartic process of contemplation and remembering so many things about our life with the person who we are now mourning. Yes, we will feel pain at what could have been, but going through the process that I have described tonight enables us, the mourning process, enables us to develop a more objective perspective on our parents. We become more sensitive to where they came from and the trials and tribulations that their life entailed. In turn, we develop a deeper sensitivity to them and a far greater understanding of how hard they tried and how special they were in their own unique ways. To honor our parents who have passed on from this life, we refer to them as my mother, Zichrana Livracha, may her memory be for a blessing, or my mother, Aleha Hashalom, peace be upon her. Once you are married and have children of your own, naming a child after your deceased parents is considered an honor for them. Our sages have provided us with specific ways that we can help our loved ones gain merit through actions in our daily lives. We can dedicate our actions for the soul of our parents through the following suggestions, as we know, many of which we know, but it's good to be reminded of them. Study Torah, or ask a Torah scholar to dedicate his study or her study to your parent's soul. During the week of Shiva, others study Torah, since mourners are not allowed to study Torah. Tzedakah, give charity or donate a Torah scroll, prayer books, or holy books in the name of your loved one to an organization, synagogue, or school. And it's a good idea to have the name of your parent inscribed inside the book. Acts of kindness. Whenever you do a chesed, a kind deed, keep in mind that you are doing this mitzvah as a merit for the soul of your parent. Keep it in mind. This creates a great impact, for just as you have accomplished kindness, the soul of the departed will now benefit from God's kindness in turn. Prayer. There is, of course, the Holy Chodesh prayer that is said during the first year of mourning and on the Yartzeit. Chodesh proclaims our desire that the name of Hashem be sanctified. When one suffers a loss and is then able to recite the Chodesh, he is publicly accepting God's decree. This is considered to be one of the greatest mitzvahs, or Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of God's name. The merit for the soul when we do this, when we say Chodesh, is real and great. Our mitzvahs become our parents' lifeline as we link our good deeds to their soul, and they now benefit from our actions. In so doing, we can create the ultimate connection. Embrace a mitzvah. Choose a mitzvah and put your signature on it. It can be a mitzvah that your parent loved doing, or one that you would now like to take on. As we know, there are hundreds of possible mitzvahs to consider, such as visiting the sick, driving patients to doctor's appointments, offering your professional services to those who cannot afford them, cooking and baking for families under stress, saying blessings before and after you eat, keeping kosher, honoring the Shabbos, praying each day, and avoiding gossip and shaming others. Light a Yartzeit memorial candle in honor of your parent's soul. 4 times a year one lights a memorial candle, in addition to doing so on the Yartzeit, the date of passing. The holidays of Yom Kippur, Passover, Shavuos, and Sukkot allow us the opportunity of Yitzkor, remembrance. We light a candle at sundown, and the flame of the candle symbolizes the human soul, which is never extinguished. While lighting the candle, think about your loved one and say, I am lighting this flame in the merit that my loved one's soul finds peace and attains greater heights in the heavens above. And on the actual date of the Yartzeit, we are given added opportunities to help the soul soar higher in heaven, because Yartzeit is a day of judgment for the soul. It is a custom to gather together and have a meal. A Suda, for example, contribute to the Kiddush Fund at Shul, where we speak fondly about and relate cherished memories of our loved one. I try to do things for my departed parents by tapping into the unique traits that were so special about them, while also giving back in ways that have true meaning for me. My dad, Baruch ben Shlomo, alav hashalom, was an intellectual, a lover of learning. So I teach in his memory, which is in line with his special strength of learning and my love of teaching. They say we come into this world alone and that we die alone. But that's not true. We come into this world with a mom. The mom's got to be there. And hopefully a dad right there with us. And hopefully, God willing, we will die with our children right there with us. So how can we honor our parents forever? We have to remember that no matter what, they gave us life. We are partly who we are because of them. Our parents are ours They are part of us, just as we are a part of them. The greatest deeds that we can do for our parents is to emulate their strengths during their lives and remember them by associating them with their virtues, and to do good deeds in their memory forever after. As my mom wisely observed, when her dad, my grandfather, Yitzchak Meyer, alav hashalom, passed away, the world became a very large place where she no longer had a parent to run to in need, because her mom had passed away many years earlier. She no longer had a parent to run to in need when her dad passed away, and therefore none of her parents were living. No longer had a parent to protect her and shelter her against the trials and tribulations of life. And so too for me, the world has become much more vast, as both my mom and dad are now gone from this world, and no longer can I look into their eyes or hear their voice or touch their hand. Preparing this talk has been very difficult for me, and it took a lot of time to painstakingly put into words my thoughts, emotions, and experiences through this difficult journey of loss of my cherished mom. I realize now that it too was an important part of the process for me, a cathartic step that has helped prepare me to take on life in even more meaningful ways, with an enhanced perspective, awareness, and appreciation of my purpose on this earth. I feel armed with a greater resilience now, after my year, to be able to let go of being an Aliyas, to carry on more effectively and more wisely as a parent to my children and a grandparent to my grandchildren, with the hope that I will get to see great-grandchildren, God willing. And I am now ready to put up pictures of my beloved parents all over my house, where I can be reminded of the love, indebtedness, and sincere gratitude that I have for having had them as parents, my parents. I am so lucky, Baruch Hashem. Thank you so very much for being here with me tonight and for sharing with me in this meaningful final step as I now complete my year of mourning. May Hashem bless all of us to be wiser matriarchs to our beloved families and to carry on the beautiful legacy that our parents have given us forever. Amen.